Hello!
Hi.
Jo's gone very husky on us today, so she's probably not going to talk much. And welcome to April, and it's the beginning of April. It's April Fool's Day, so we want to talk about being foolish today, which if you've ever spent any time with us, you'll know we're quite adept at. But we want to think about how children youth ministry can tap into foolishness and recklessness and silliness and all of those wonderful things that we all know, don't we, that working with children and young people particularly is often littered with.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that sometimes stops people from taking it seriously. But actually what we'd like to dig into particularly this month is the opportunity for us to be fools for Christ and have that opportunity to speak truth to power, which young children and young people are often so good at.
Yeah, often in a way that we struggle with, don't we, when they want to really challenge us. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of the fool and you know, that kind of Shakespearean idea of the fool being the person that could be honest with the king without fear of losing their head because they could do it in a slightly foolish way. And I often think that the prophets in the Old Testament particularly, Nathaniel talking to David, has that ability to be able to speak truth in a way that means that he's listened to, but without fear of retribution. And there's something about the honesty and the authenticity of the way that young people and children speak to us that cuts through some of the other rubbish that we're dealing with sometimes. And we know that often those voices aren't listened to, often aren't even given space to speak into things. And it's really vital for us as we look to grow church and to grow disciples that we give those voices adequate space and we enable ourselves to hear them, properly hear them, and respond to them in the right ways. Respond in ways that allow us to change and develop who we are and collectively and what we're doing as church in response to that truth that comes through young, unfiltered eyes into what we're doing.
Yeah, really, really important. And actually, if they're not there, if they're not present and we're not hearing those voices, then we're not fully representative of the body of Christ. And you know, it's perhaps not the verse that I like to go back to again and again because it's trotted out so often, but there is a reason. There really is a reason that Jesus said that unless we become like children, we will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And maybe it is part of it is that ability to speak a truth where we see it, or to speak out a lie when we hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that authenticity is something that children and young people are really tuned into. They can see the unauthentic much clearer than we often can, and so when they do speak into that, when they highlight those things, those are actually prophetic voices that we ignore at our peril, because they are looking at things through a perspective that, as we get more on in years and more cynical, we cannot see things through. So there's a vitalness in hearing from those things, which are really important. And it's fun as well, isn't it, to spend time listening to what young people and children think about our churches and the things we're doing and the stuff that's going on. It actually is life-giving for us as well. So we need to encourage everybody to be in those spaces of and in that attitude of listening to things.
And here we are, Barry. Next week it will be Good Friday, and as Paul said, the cross seems like foolishness to those who don't believe, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. Sometimes what we think of as foolishness is actually the power of God at work. So let's not underestimate any of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see in the newsletter all the different things that we're doing as usual, and hear about and read about some of the other things that are going on. But I want to, particularly in this thing about hearing and listening to young people and children's voices, just to highlight the fact that in September and the autumn we're launching our Young Leaders Programme. So as a Youth Connect team, we'll be running groups across the diocese in our deaneries that will be about drawing young people in as leaders, not just thinking about leadership in our churches, but leadership in all spheres of life, and how we can harness those voices of the young, not just for the future, but for now. So, be thinking about, if you know somebody in and around your church that's sort of age 13 or over, that you think actually we can see that God's putting something in them and on them, then do point them towards those things, because we want to see a fresh generation of young people empowered to speak into what we're doing and to speak into the world around us, because it's not just us that needs to hear God from God. The world is desperate to know God's truth and be able to be shaped by that. So have a wonderful Easter, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.